Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. We are going to talk about the horrific incident that happened in India's Jharkhand state. A Brazilian Spanish tourist was allegedly gang raped, and she and her husband were beaten by the attackers. Now, police in the area has confirmed this incident, with Press Trust of India saying that 8 people have been arrested in this particular connection. The victim posted a video on one of the social media handles. Let me quote her, saying, "7 men raped me. They have beaten us and robbed us, although not many things were taken because what they wanted was to rape me." And she added that the men beat them and threatened to kill them. The Brazilian embassy in India has said the woman and her husband were victims of a serious criminal attack, and it would continue to monitor all the developments. Likewise, Spanish embassy in India posted on X, formerly Twitter, "We need to stand united in our commitment to end violence against women everywhere in the world." We saw some amendments as to the law that relates to rape, the punishment related to rape in India after that notorious gang rape and murder case back in 2012 when a 23-year-old student was gang raped on a bus. Back in 2012, there were nationwide protests also regarding that particular incident, after which the Indian authorities were forced to make some amendments into that particular law. Now, the chief police investigator in that particular case, Chaya Sharma, had said, let me quote her, "The case was a watershed moment, and Delhi shouldn't be seen as the rape capital." However, we have seen the situation didn't change after that particular incident in India. An activist from People Against Rapes in India said, "I really thought this might be the last case, but unfortunately this didn't happen." Now, according to the National Crimes Record Bureau data, an average of nearly 90 rapes were reported in India, meaning one woman was raped every 18 minutes in 2022, which recorded 31,516 rape cases that year. Now, many voices say this particular figure that has been shared by this particular body, the government organization, is not actually the reality. Actually, the number of cases are far bigger, and they go unreported because of a certain social phenomenon in India. Also, we have seen that incident of 2 tribal women being paraded naked and sexually assaulted by a mob back in May 2023 in the Manipur state. Also, we have seen some very horrific statements coming from the top leadership of BJP, specifically talking about the women in graves, particularly in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. What sort of a mindset is prevalent in the Indian society? How the foreign tourists are treated by the Indian society? In this particular alleged case of gang rape to this Brazilian and Spanish national tourist is not an incident in isolation. Similar sort of incidents have also happened in India before. Also, for all these aspects we discussed in today's show, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Mr. Zaman Bajwa. He's Executive Director, Youth Forum Kashmir. Mr. Bajwa, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Also, in the studio, we are honored to have been joined by Mr. Jauhar Saleem. He's former Foreign Secretary of Pakistan. Mr. Saleem, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. On Skype at the same time, we are honored to have been joined by Mr. Altaf Hussain Wani, his Indian affairs expert. Mr. Wani, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. Let me begin the discussion with you, Mr. Wani, if both of you gentlemen allow me. Mr. Wani, when we talk specifically of this particular case of gang rape, the alleged case of gang rape with a foreign tourist, a Brazilian Spanish national in India, what do we make out of it? How does the Indian society treats its guests, the foreign tourists?
Thank you, Johnny, for having me on this show. This, as you earlier said, this is not a case in isolation. We have seen before such cases happening in India at the length and breadth of India that foreign tourists and foreigners are being raped, they are being gang raped, and then even some cases they have been murdered in India. But there's two reasons for this, why this is happening and why there's no control on it. One is that it is the state which has given license to its troops in different parts of India and encouraged them to rape and use rape as a weapon of war. In the northeast of India, we have seen it, and also in the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, you have seen a lot of such cases happening there. The second is that the hate speech and the hate crime, which the majority community is committing against the minorities or the Christians and Muslims. This is the another one which encourages it. And when we see, if you see that when a gang rape happens in Delhi, when a Hindu girl was gang raped in a bus, then the Indian government established a commission, Burma Commission, and all over India, the Indian celebrities, people came out to protest against that gang rape. But when the same gang rape happens in Jammu and Kashmir, Nasfa Banu, and normal girl is being raped, is gang raped by the Hindu extremists and then killed in collaboration with the police. We do not see any resistance throughout India by the Indian civil society or the so-called celebrities of India. This is the double standards. These double standards when happen, then the society becomes so arrogant. And in Kashmir, we have talked a lot of times on it that how India used rape as a weapon of war in Kashmir, be it Kunal Poshpura, be it Shupian, be it Islamabad, Anantnag, or be that of Aspa Banu's case. So we have recently seen what has happened in the northeast, in Manipur and other places, how those women paraded naked in the streets because they were time and again being raped by the Indian forces there. But there is no accountability that India has given license to its troops to do it. And when the troops are allowed to do it, when there is no accountability for that, then they all Indian citizens, especially these RSS mongers, also see that will be no accountability for that. We have seen the Bilkis Banu case, how the rapists were released by the Supreme Court of India. Unfortunately, in all these cases, when we see then this menace of rape is not ending in India, but it has become an epidemic throughout India. As rightly the investigator at that time said, that Delhi has become a rape capital. But we can say the whole of the Indian society is facing the same crisis this time.
Right, let me proceed with the discussion. Mr. Saleem, now when we talk about a presumption as to the treatment with hospitality to the guests, the foreign tourists in any part of the world, in any country, they should be welcomed, they should be dealt with hospitality. But on the contrary, we have seen a very different pattern that has developed over the years in India. This particular case, the recent case, is not in isolation. There have been similar incidents reported from various parts of India in the past as well. What does that depict?
Yes, there have been many of such cases. I think some of the landmark cases were in 2018, there was a British tourist who was raped. Then in 2016, there was an American tourist who was gang raped. In 2013, there was a Swiss tourist who was gang raped. And of course, before that, 2012, we had that famous Delhi gang rape case, which was, horrific for the entire world. I think violence against women is very much pervasive in India. And despite what we see, the shining India, the gloss that we see, what Bollywood projects about India, the glamour, the liberal India, the India where couples can cohabit, the India where sort of everything that you find in the West is available and permissible. But that is one side. On the other side, what we see is a very patriarchal society, but more importantly, a very misogynistic society. And even in the Indian movies, you see that. I think there was a controversy whereby in a very famous recent movie, there was a scene where the hero asked a woman to lick his shoes, and she does that. There's a very, and this movie that did a roaring business, I think the name was Animal, perhaps. So this is the type of, and also in the movies and the sort of Netflix series, and we see now so many of those, the Indian ones on Netflix. We see instances where women are not only sort of discriminated, but also subject to violence. They're subject to stalking. They're subject to harassment. So I think that is unfortunate, because India, on the one hand, claims to be a democracy with the very liberal values, and on the other hand, this is the situation that are being faced by the Indian women. And of course, in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, we saw that this violence against women being used as a tool of repression. And that is very unfortunate, because the Indians, what they don't understand is that once the Indian government, that is, that once you use that in one particular situation, then you are basically projecting and propagating that similar instances can happen in other parts of India. And I think because that is where you damage your own value system, if you have a value system which does not promote violence against women. So this is something serious. I think India is one of the countries now in the world which is attracting a lot of tourism. It has a huge soft power, India's the brand India is a rising brand, and despite that, we see all these cases. We see that the tourists are not safe in India. These cases in particular, where did they happen? The cases that we saw before, they happened in places like Goa, which attracts a lot of tourists. Delhi itself, the capital of India. And I don't think it speaks very well for India's culture, on the one hand, which is being projected so very much by Bollywood and by the Indian government itself, or for the state of gender rights in India.
Right. How does it actually affect the relationship with that foreign country of which that particular citizen, that tourist, has been the victim?
Yeah. And of course, the embassy of that particular country would really push for justice, first of all, and of course the support to the victim. Okay, that is happening. In this case as well, we saw that the culprits, at least they claim that they have been all arrested. In previous cases as well, the accused were arrested, and when the Swiss lady was gang raped, all the 6 of the rapists were life sentenced. So that has been there, I think, and that will probably satisfy the concerned embassies and the governments. So it does not really become an irritant in the relations as such, because appropriate penal action is supposed to have been taken. But what it does is, it does actually sends a message to the tourists coming from those countries that India is not a safe country. And and India attract a lot of European tourists, in particular, Western tourists in particular. So I think that is where it counts, because in this particular case, this Brazilian lady with a Spanish nationality, she is a vlogger, right? So imagine if it happens to a vlogger, so what type of projection it's or what type of message it's sending to the world. I think that is where it's more important, rather, in terms of relations between the governments.
Right. Mr. Bajwa, your understanding, as Mr. Saleem has pointed out, the depiction in the movies or the Bollywood also, and the kind of violence against women in India, and the projection related to that. I mean, does this particular phenomenon, this alarming number of rape cases in India, according to its government organization, the National Crimes Records Bureau, do you think it has to deal with this particular depiction in the films and movies, or is this particular phenomenon pervasive and deep-rooted somewhere in the social fabric, the way the Indian society operates towards women?
Before I go to your question, I will second Mr. Wani, what he talked about. India is using rape as the weapon of war. If you see the stats, especially the stats in Indian occupied Kashmir, more than 30,000 women are gang raped in that particular conflict zone. As well as if we talk about 90s, there was two villages, Kanan Pashpura. The incident we just A few days back, it was the anniversary of that incident where the child of 8 years to a 80 years grandma was gang raped by the Indian security forces. So you just imagine the Indian society and its governmental institutions behave around this particular issue. And if we talk about the stats, these are very alarming, and the global community is very concerned about these stats. If we talk about only the New Delhi, 4 rapes per day are happening in New Delhi per day. And if you talk about the rape in 2021 data, it will be there was more than 30,000 rapes. And if you see about the stats in 2022, that increased by 4%. It went on the 31,000 plus, and there is still increase in that states. And one of the largest states where the gang rapes are happening and rapes are happening is the UP and Uttarakhand. So there is only in UP 50% of these rapes are happening. And sir, I mentioned that the British girl was raped in Goa in 2022, and earlier that the same year, American lady complained about that she was raped in New Delhi in a hotel. So this is a situation, and actually all is happening because of the behavior of the society.
I'll come to you on this very important point. I'll take your detailed view regarding as to that approach, that behavior towards women, this alarming increase in the percentage and the numbers of the rapes happening in India. For now, we are joined by another participant in the show. Barrister Safiullah Ghori is a legal expert. Barrister Ghori, thank you very much for taking time out for Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. Let's talk about that particular percentage of rapes that are happening in India. With every single passing day, that percentage keeps on increasing, despite the fact there were certain amendments made by the Indian authorities after 2012. That particular case of a gang rape of 23-year-old girl who succumbed later to those injuries. Don't you think after that particular amendment, there could be an atmosphere of fear among those people who could go and do such type of horrific acts? Rather, we have seen things going in the opposite direction, a considerable increase in the percentage. What's your understanding?
It's a very interesting question. Thank you for having me on your show. So, first of all, I'd just like to take this opportunity. I was listening to the other guests talk about this as well, and I'd like to add an important piece of information that I have not seen any other news channel talking about as yet. This unfortunate Spanish lady who was raped, Spanish Brazilian lady, she actually visited Pakistan first. And when leaving Pakistan, she said Pakistan is one of the safest countries. Then this is before she entered India, where she was met with this unfortunate incident. So, this should help us draw a comparison, at least on an individual level, as to how both countries view this heinous act.
So
as far as India is concerned, obviously one can go around implementing.
And if she gives that particular version about after visiting Pakistan, that she felt safe and the people were hospitable towards her, and she was treated with respect and with hospitality, there is a presumption always by the nature of hospitality that whenever a guest comes to visit your country, the people happen to be welcoming, they happen to be good towards the guests, especially the foreign tourists. But we have seen an altogether 180-degree opposite pattern that developed.
This is what I'm trying to get at. So you see, it has less to do with the legal implications and more to do with the psychological manner in which foreigners are treated in both the countries. So, for instance, in Pakistan, like you correctly mentioned, when a foreigner visits, they are treated as a guest. They are treated as a gift from God, so to speak. And there are countless instances where foreigners report that they don't even have to pay for their food, let alone be victims of crime. That's almost unthinkable in Pakistan. Now, let's juxtaposition it with India. In India, we see a lot of, because of the government's policies, because of the kind of environment that has built up, we see them trying to constantly overpower foreigners, because they have this sense of hubris, sense of false pride that they have now conquered the whole world. They have reached on the moon. They have done this and that, and now therefore they feel the desire to show their dominant nature by indulging in all sorts of stupidities and heinous acts like rapes. So rapes of foreigners are extremely common. That India has been reported as being one of the worst countries for solo traveling females. In fact, the worst country for solo females traveling there. Once again, stark comparison with Pakistan, where female motorcyclists went all the way from Karachi up to Hunza without any problems whatsoever. But this is what India has managed to do by inculcating in them this false sense of pride of how they are so masculine and how they're so dominant. And you see this all over their movies. You see in their movies them a Hindu man always dominating a Muslim woman. Sometimes you see a strong Hindu character who is dominant, and there are white women who are falling for him. And this is what every Indian is now receiving subconsciously. This idea that they are the most superior of all and they can get away with anything. And perhaps the legal system there has also been conducive in that. We have seen, like for instance, very correctly mentioned, Kashmir is right now the one place where more rapes take place than any other place in the whole world. And Haryana too, by the way, a Hindu place, is the rape capital of the world. What happens to those rape cases? What eventually happens to the court? When Hindus commit them and it's then pundits, nothing seems to happen. And I suppose then this is a natural progression of what would happen if law is not implemented, even legal provisions exist in a particular court. So I honestly feel like this false pride, this terrorism that we see all around in Bollywood, that we see are being is them.
Barrister Gauri, unfortunately, we can't hear you properly. We'll try to reconnect with you. I want to have your understanding regarding the legal procedure involving such type of heinous crimes. If you can hear me and you can respond to this particular thing, that when we talk about the legal procedures, I mean, there are many voices. Unfortunately, we lost the connection with Barrister Gauri. We'll try to reconnect with him. Mr. Wani, now when we talk about this alarming increase in the percentage and the number of rape cases happening within India, what's your understanding about how basically the Indian society goes about women, their dignity? Is it deeply embedded within the very societal fabric of India? As Barrister Gauri also mentioned already, when we specifically talk about the foreign tourists coming to Pakistan, Pakistanis happen to be more hospitable, more welcoming, more respectful towards them. And the kind of versions, the kind of the feedback that we get from the foreign tourists is always very positive. That speaks volumes about the kind of people, how people in Pakistan treat the foreign tourists. On the contrary, there is an opposite trend within India. Where does this particular attitude actually originate from?
But Barrister said, quite aptly explained it, that how Indian society has developed in recent years, that they are now at the moon and they are the more developed country in the world, and the people come here to play cricket, they come here to play soccer, they play here, they come here to entertain for entertainment and all that. So we have the every right to deal with them, how we can deal with them. And at the top of that, we have to see the statements of the Indian leadership, the hate speech by the Indian leadership, by the political leaders of RSS, BJP, and alike, their statements against the minorities. When they speak against the minorities, when they speak of the Hindutva, then the cadres in the Hindutva and all those, they think everybody who is coming to India, whether he is a Christian or Muslim, or anybody who lives in India, whether he is a Christian or Muslim, he or she is our property. We can do anything with them, and that they are doing. And there is a very huge gap between the legal structure and the implementation. As we already discussed, that after this 2012 incident of Delhi rape case, then Commission sanctioned that the rapist should be given the highest of the highest in our, because at that time, as I told you, whole of the Indian civil society and celebrities were on the roads to condemn this. But unfortunately, the Indian courts in different cases, when we see other cases, the Indian courts favored the rapists; they were set free. And then also the mindset in the RSS BJP is that they can do anything. We talking of the Jharkhand. Jharkhand has become the next hub of this RSS BJP nexus and the mindset, because the most intolerant people, most recently we have seen they captured a Muslim Eidgah there and asked Muslims not to pray there, and also attempted to rape the Muslim women who were there. They had done it there. And similarly, the BJP and the allies did the same thing in the Northeast. And this has become now a mindset in the North, whole of the North India. Whole of the North India, which has been engulfed by the Hindutva extremists, is facing this epidemic of incidents like rape and mob lynching and others, which are India is not earning any good name by it. But unfortunately, the Indian media, Indian film industry and all that, they promote India as the shining India, as all that. But the world statistics show that India is one of the most intolerant countries in the world. So the tourists who are coming to India are risking their lives, they are risking their pride, as did the Spanish tourists.
When we talk about the international fora, international organizations, and that international voice, where let me bring in that particular case of Afghanistan, where there is so much talk done by the international community when the de facto authorities resort to banning women from employment and schooling and education and going to the universities. There happens to be a lot of hue and cry regarding that particular thing. But this alarming number, this continuous increase in the rape cases in India, and as per the National Crime Records Bureau data, 31,516 were reported back in 2020. Many voices saying that this is actually not the factual number. Actually, the number happens to be a lot bigger than this. And these are the cases which have actually been reported. Is there any international organization or is there any international mechanism in place that deals with this particular issue, and also conveys its serious reservations to this alarming increase in the percentage of such horrific crime happening in the so-called largest democracy in the world?
Yeah. Well, firstly, what the international organizations, I think what they see is whether, certain facts or certain numbers are instances of crimes, or they're institutionalized in the system of the country, in the dispensation, the ruling dispensation of the country. So they, of course, naturally in that way see Afghanistan differently than India. India, the number of rape cases that you've mentioned, 32,000, and it's just a small fraction. Probably the actual number would be 10 times more, for all we know. If we compare that to Pakistan, I think in the last numbers that I saw in the last 4 or 5 years, actually the numbers have been dropping. In 2018, it was 4,000-5,000, and then it dropped to 3,000, and then 2,000, and so on. So that's a good sign. But I think what the international organizations, they don't really look at the crime statistics. And these are of course seen as crime statistics. And these crime statistics should actually matter in terms of perception of a country, international perception of a country, and it should matter in terms of a country brand. A country brand is very important, the soft power of a country, which determines the ability of a country to attract trade, tourism, investment, and also allows it a certain clout in international affairs. Now, I think where we need to reflect is, or sort of, really think about is that how come India, despite what it does to its minorities, despite its caste-ridden society, despite a government dominated by a party with fascist or neo-fascist ideals, despite all these statistics, the crime statistics against women, despite that, they have a better brand value than Pakistan. And that is the very unfortunate element, because we are, as it has been mentioned, we're so much better in terms of hospitality, in terms of less violence against women, in terms of rape, and many other, and in our society, we are not a caste-ridden society. We do not really, we have not marginalized our minorities to the same extent that we see in India. We don't really have sort of fascist parties with fascist ideals, particularly in power. So despite all that, why are we not getting all that number of tourists? Why are we not getting that type of foreign investment, foreign businessmen from other countries? Why are we not getting that type of trade numbers? I think that's where we really need to reflect and see that how come Indians, despite all these this ugly this ugliness of violence against women, these pockets of hate and sort of seclusion and violence and marginalization, despite that, how are they able to still project a shining India? Of course, these type of news, when they travel internationally, these reports, they result in a dent in that image, but somehow they are able to repair that, So I think,
is it the success of Indian authorities or the Indian system that actually repairs it later on, or already such type of incidents which cause a dent in that particular international prestige and reputation, or is it because of the international community deliberately turning a blind eye to such type of incidents emanating from India?
Yeah, and that's a good point. There are 3 or 4 things here. I think one is, of course, the size, the advantage of a big size, the big economy, and they have exports of $600 billion, imports of equivalent or bigger numbers, and in terms of the reserves, or in terms of the market that they present to the world. That is one thing. And then, of course, the other thing is their position in the political framework, in the jigsaw puzzle, Indo-Pacific strategy of America, and then the sort of in the Western strategy, their placement within that. Okay, those are very important. Then their relationship, the fact that they enjoy good relations with Israel, for instance, and Israel has Jewish lobbies are everywhere. They have a very significant presence in the media. There are very many factors, but I think one big factor, and that is where we need to work as well, is the fact that the media is very effective. Their movie industry is tremendously effective. In fact, it is said that the Indian Foreign Service or their diplomacy has not been able to project India for the last 70 years the way Bollywood has done. What Bollywood has done for India, probably like no organ of their state has done. So that is, I think, where this soft power emerges from.
What about the dark side of Bollywood movies? That a couple of examples that you already mentioned in your earlier take.
Yeah, those examples are there.
That show misogyny with such an impunity.
Exactly, they do that, and despite that, because this whole song and dance and the colors and and the unfortunate part also is, did you see what they project in their movies? A big part of that is actually our cultural heritage, but they have literally stolen it, because we have not been showing it, like this whole, for example, this Punjabi culture, this Bhangra and this this kind of, the music that we have, the heritage of poetry and dance, so much of their songs, for instance, they're always based on Urdu poetry. The diction and dialogues that you see in their movies, they are much closer to Urdu, mainstream Urdu, than to mainstream Hindu, which is, when you see their news reports, they're totally different. It seems like they're 2 different languages. So I think they've used that. For example, the Indian restaurants that we see in the world, half of them are Bangladeshi and Pakistani restaurants, but they all are lumped together as Indian cuisine, and and all this the shalwar kameez and gagra and all this beautiful dresses, the beautiful traditions that have. Now, shalwar, for example, is actually a Turkish word. The thing came from Turkey, the Turkic sultans and the Mughals and everything. That's how. But now the world sees it as an Indian dress, and and it's similarly many other traditions that you see in Indian movies. they're not their traditions as such. They're not Hindu traditions only. They're traditions like this Indus Valley, Indus Valley was the cultural hub of India. But I think that is where we need to really work on. We need to work on, like how to develop our brand, how to develop our soft image, how to develop our soft power in the world. Something that India has done so spectacularly well,
Right.
despite all the ugliness that we see. The human rights violations, the violence against women, the marginalization of minorities, the inequality that we see, the stark inequality, millions of people sleeping on the streets, and then there are the Ambanis, all that, and despite that. So I think, I think that is where
Right.
we really need to reflect upon.
Right, Mr. Bajwa, now let me now put forth two different statements. Now, that particular incident that happened in May in Manipur, where two tribal women were sexually assaulted and they were paraded naked by a mob over there. The statement came from Prime Minister Narendra Modi saying that incident had shamed India and that the guilty won't be spared. And I assure the nation the law will take its course with all its might. What happened with the daughters of Manipur can never be forgiven. Let me bring another statement by one of the co-speakers of the Yogi Adityanath, is one of the leading figures in Bharatiya Janata Party, specifically talking about the women, taking them out of their graves in IIOJK and doing that horrific act with them. I don't want to name that particular act over here. You understood what. How do you compare both of these statements? What do they depict? The seriousness, the understanding of the gravity and the sensitivity of the nature of this particular grave crime in that particular statement by Modi, or that impunity, that hubris, and whatever you call it, in that particular statement by that speaker, in that particular rally in UP about women in IIOJK. As Mr. Wani has also mentioned, Mr. Saleem has also mentioned that this particular horrific act, which I won't again say, has been used as a weapon of war and as an instrument of repression, especially in IIOJK.
I will just only say that it's a hypocrisy, and it's a contradiction of the statements which are given by the Prime Minister Modi and the other BJP leadership. I will just give you the seriousness of particular and the conviction. Actually, their numbers are very less, and after that, the conviction on such type of the crime is the 30%. We just see the seriousness of the Indian judicial system about this particular law. You talk about the schemes that you mentioned Indian occupied Kashmir. You know that when into 2019 the special status of the Kashmir was revoked, and there were some statements by the BJP representative that now the other parts of the India will get white skinny girls to marry them. We are revoking that special status. Now they can go there, they can live there. So you can just see the mentality of the people and the leadership of that particular party. Few years back, there was a wrestler from the
Yes.
she convicted
The head of the Wrestling Federation,
that
she was,
and
he was accused of sexually assaulting.
yes,
the
she said that
athletes.
the head of the federation is involved in the harassment of the women which are in the wrestling, and after that, that particular person was backed by the BJP. So there is no seriousness regarding all this. They are just giving the statements. And I will mention that a few decades back, there was riots between Muslim and Hindus in Gujarat, and 11 people were convicted at that time. And in 2022, 11% was got released from that rape.
What are the loopholes? Why were they
Actually-
released? I mean, what are the loops in that Indian judicial system when it comes to addressing this particular horrific crime?
Actually, the judicial system is not serious. Actually, the evidence is very weak, and people get bailed, and or they get very limited sentences in such type of the incidents. And also, as well as when we particularly talk about the minorities, the government also using this as a weapon. Because and sir talked about the perception building of the soft and the secular India. Secular India, actually that they are investing millions of dollars in the cultural diplomacy, but still the voices of the minorities, the voices of the Kashmiris are still roaring in global arenas. Few months back, a American congressman shows very concerned about the situation and the handling of the minorities by the Indian government in India, and particularly in the Kashmir. And you talked about the Manipur. When you see the Kuki and Mitati tribe conflict, you see that the two women were just marched naked in that particular.
That was exactly I was talking about, the statement which subsequently came from Prime Minister Modi. That
I will just say the complexity and the miseries of the people. These girls and their families went on a strike for weeks to just get registered their case, and government was not ready to get registered the case. And after that, when these women took the things in their hand and they just burned some houses, after that all this government machinery came in and they just registered FIR. When government is not registering an FIR, and there is a thousand of the cases which are not get registered in the Indian judicial system, then how the victim will get the justice?
Right. You already, Mr. Bajwa, you mentioned that these voices, despite that all glory, the so-called glory that it presents, the glitter, the cultural diplomacy with its the tool of cultural diplomacy, India present itself to the world. You are of the view these voices are, on the contrary, also being heard in the major world capitals. What's expected from them?
Actually, we expected that when we are just on the very edge of the International Women's Rights Day, which is coming on that 8th of March, and that slogan is very brighter than the invest on the women. So now we expect that the global communities and the world leaders which are seeing the situation of the crimes happening against the women in India, they must ask the government to act against the people involved in the in such type of the crimes, and also they have to act and they have to give the rights to the people, particularly the people of Indian occupied Kashmir, and give the justice of the Kanan Pashpura ladies who were get raped, and as well as the other ladies which are belongs to our any community. But the women of the India must get justice for such type of the crimes.
Right. Mr. Wani, this has been mentioned by Mr. Bajwa that conviction in rape cases in India happen to be only 30% because of the loopholes in that Indian judicial system. Although there were amendments made after 2012 incident into Indian Penal Code, this related sections that relate to rape law in India. What do you think has been the major hurdle in the conviction of such type of cases of such horrific crimes in India, and what needs to be addressed in that regard? Firstly, and secondly, what do you understand if such type of voices are being heard globally, despite that glitter and the glory that is presented by India through cultural diplomacy? What should be done by the international community? Should there be a mechanism to convey the serious concerns towards India to go about this particular menace?
On the 4th of March, the UN High Commissioner on Human Rights, in his opening speech, when he talked about India, he talked about the discrimination against minorities, discrimination against women, and intolerance and hate speech by the Indian leadership. Though he say that India is a democracy and all that, but along with that, this much was conveyed to the government of India. Similarly, the special rapporteur on the violence against women and children, they have always conveyed to the government of India their concern on this situation. There is an international mechanism on this, how to stop all these things what are happening in India. India has been told time and again during the 3 UPR cycles, India was told to sign the credo and to also to repeal the Army Force Special Power Act and other such laws which are facilitating these rape cases and other things in India. As I earlier told you that the menace has spread in India when Indian government gave the license to its troops first, to its police. When police and its army is as having complete impunity for these crimes, then the civilians, then the other people also get encouraged. And when the Indian courts decide these cases on the basis of cost, on the basis of color, on the basis of their political alignment, then these become very much evident, because we have seen in all these cases, in previous cases, we have seen when the Bilkis Bano accused, they were set free at the time of elections because BJP had to win these Gujarat elections. So they were set free by the court. Similarly, in other cases, they have been set free. When a chief minister of Delhi, UP, is the chief minister Rajnath Yogi, when during election campaign he says that you can rape the Muslim woman, and like my earlier friend said that what Haryana chief minister said after the abrogation of Article 370 of Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So these are the, now it has become now a new norm in India. The Indians of the north.
I have to cut you short over here, Mr. Altaf Hussain Wani. Unfortunately, we are short of time. Indian affairs expert joining us on Skype. Thank you very much for taking time out for Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. Mr. Jauhar Saleem, former Foreign Secretary of Pakistan, joining us in the studio, and Mr. Zaman Bajwa, Executive Director, Youth Forum Kashmir. Thank you very much for your time, both of you gentlemen, for being with us on today's Views on News. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.